Good morning, welcome to the County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. Coordinating or cooperating. Those are two terms that are used a lot in land planning, but there's a big difference in how they're applied. That's the subject of our show today. When you deal with a public land agency like the Forest Service or the Bureau of Land Management, and you are a local government unit, you have certain rights and authorities in the relationship as it's written into federal law, but a lot of counties don't exercise it to its maximum usefulness. That is the topic of our show, and it's so extensive that we are going to bypass our usual background story. So joining us for a panel discussion today is Jim Matson, who's a Kane County Commissioner, who is currently a county going through the process of making sure that they are engaged with the federal government and land agencies as a cooperating agency. And joining us also is the planner from Kane County, Shannon McBride. Thank you for joining us, Shannon.
Thank you for having me.
Why is it important for counties to become coordinating agencies instead of cooperating?
You know, you've got both tools available to us, and what we're trying to do is make sure we're effective in both arenas. To date, the federal government has been offering cooperating agency status as it relates to relationships between governments and also as it relates to NEPA, or the environmental impact process. But there's a whole other world out there that's involved in coordination. And so our county likes to tap both of those to the maximum extent so that we can represent our point of views in those processes.
Why is cooperating status so much more powerful to protect local planning and local desires for resource management than coordinating?
Actually, it's the other way around.
The other way around.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
I stand corrected.
And Shannon's got that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a little bit of difference with cooperating. You know, the agencies can keep everything private, confidential, and you have to have a memorandum of understanding to participate. But with coordination, it puts the counties at an equal seat at the table. So then everything, you can invite your public, they can be involved, you have those meetings, and the federal agencies have to work to be consistent with your local plans, where in cooperation agencies, they really don't have to do that. So coordination is a lot more powerful tool for the counties to use.
Are there cases where you'd want to use coordinating as opposed to cooperating?
It's offered, you know, by the agencies as far as the process when they're trying to come up with some sort of decision. But I think it's incumbent upon us to be effective on that, but at the same time carry the coordination part as well. And as Shannon has indicated, we've got far more latitude if we exercise our coordination rights.
Can you just walk up and declare, okay, we now consider ourselves at coordinating status, and we want a seat at the table, and this is how it's going to be? Or, I mean, is there a process for this?
There is. Would you like to take that question or me?
Go right ahead.
How Kane County did it is our local commissioners, they actually wrote up a letter and gave a copy of that letter to our federal agencies, and that way they know that they want to be a coordinating agency. And so they are notified, and then we also in that coordinating letter put the mandates so that they would understand that you need to coordinate under FLPMA. In our case, we're working with the BLM on the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. And then you set up your coordination meetings, and they know that they are public meetings. So it's better to have your local government all on the same page and let them know that, okay, we're ready to be a coordinating government here, and then they know that we're going to be coordinating. So
you sent a letter to Grand Staircase, and I just kind of have a smile on my face. I'm just wondering, what was their reaction when they got the letter?
At the very beginning, they resisted, and they were kind of like, "Are you kidding?" But as they checked out statute and got involved with their Washington, D.C. office, I think they found quickly that that's in the statute, and they best be doing it. So the one thing I'd add to what Shannon has said is we have an agenda when we ask for the coordination part, and that's right out in front of the public and the whole works. And our meetings are recorded, and we have the minutes, you know, from that set of discussions, and so it sets the stage for making sure we can seek and find consistency between our local plan and what they're attempting to accomplish.
When we come back, we're going to kind of get into the weeds or the details on how you go about getting this set up and what are some of the tools you have to be prepared or commitments you have to make to do this. We'll be right back with KC.
How would you like a menu with over 400 fine dining options? Then come to Davis County, where dining goes beyond ordinary takeout. With over 400 restaurants, the possibilities for a special holiday dining experience are endless. From sautéed ribeye or authentic sushi to gourmet sandwiches and salads, it's the perfect time to escape the kitchen. See a complete list of dining options by visiting playindavis.com and plan your next night out.
Tucked away just outside of Cedar City, Utah, are two of southern Utah's best-kept secrets, Canaraville Falls and Kolob Canyons. The rare scenic views create beautiful backdrops to capture the perfect selfie. Get your selfie to Canaraville Falls or Kolob Canyons and get in on one of Utah's best-kept secrets. Go to visitcedarcity.com and access your adventure.
The Utah Farm Bureau has always been there to fight for the needs of its members, with discount programs on items ranging from vehicles and ATVs to health and wellness. The membership fees aren't big, but the results are. We've been around since 1916, and we're not leaving anytime soon. Utah Farm Bureau. We work for those who work to feed the world.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking about how to become a coordinating agency with a federal land agency. Kane County has jumped into this process, and that is where our discussion lies. You have to put them on alert. We've already covered that. You say, okay, it's time for you to recognize that we're a coordinating agency and we have a legal standing to be there. And then I guess the next thing is, what good does that do? What does that change other than the meetings are public and you have to be there?
We publish, the commissions, in this case, publishes the agenda, and the meetings are ran like any other commission agenda meeting that we have, you know, at the local county level. And the federal agency representatives are there at the table with us, and so we just operate in that fashion. And so there's no restrictions other than civility on what we're trying to accomplish, but we have to be prepared and ready to get into the details so that we can start working out what some of those differences are or may be.
Now, Shannon, when you made that presentation a few weeks ago, you talked about how critically important a county-run resource management or land management plan is, and the state has actually made funding available and actually required their counties to do this in the upcoming year. Can you give us a little detail of how and why that is such an important tool?
Well, in our case, when we started coordinating, we originally started out as a cooperating agency, and we've had some discussion, do you want to do both? And in Kane County's process, we actually are a cooperating agency still, and we do have coordination. So when you start as a coordinating agency, you need to have a resource management plan or some kind of law. Kane County actually has a resource management plan, our general plan, our county zoning map, and we also did a Chapter 27, and we zoned the whole entire Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument to match up with the state zone. So as we started our coordination meetings, that's what we focused on more in our coordination meetings, where in cooperating, we were learning their laws like FLTMA and NEPA and having to do homework to catch up to speed with theirs. But as soon as we started our coordination meetings, they actually had to start looking at our local plans, which one of them is the resource management plan. And in that, we were able to interview ranchers and get some of the needs from the ranchers. We had statistics on the economics of Kane County, our culture, our history, and the long-standing of grazing out on the monument. So at that point, when they come to the coordination meetings, you can use your resource management plan and your local customs, and that's what they look at for consistency. So if you don't have that resource plan or those laws in place, there's really not much they have to become consistent with. So it's essential in the coordination process to have those laws in place.
How deep do you have to go into the research to back up your case? Are they in a position as a coordinating agency to challenge? You know, you say, well, we think grazing should be here. Here's the economic value. Here's the resource management or the resource impact value and all those things. And then they say, oh yeah, prove it? Or, I mean, does it kind of come to that? Or?
Well, it can, and it did initially until we started getting into the detail, you know, to be able to say, you know, here's what we've found with our research, coupled with our values, and here's what's at stake. So let's take this into account. And I think in most cases, whenever any party finds themselves in a deficient position, then they have to scramble to catch up. And in this case, the Bureau of Land Management has been trying to catch up and stay with us as we go through this process. Chad, the other thing I'd say is that it's amazing to me that we have the two national statutes, you know, for this, the Federal Land Management Policy Act, and, you know, FLPMA, and also NIFMA, the National Forest Management Act, that were passed in '76. We're just learning. We should have been doing this 20, 25 years ago, and it's so powerful.
Do you think the landscape, no pun intended, the landscape of Kane County would have looked different if you had known this coming out of the chute back in 1976?
I think the economy, the direction that we should be going in, would have been vastly different. You know, frankly, because of environmental appeals and other issues that are brought about by the non-governmental agencies and so on, organizations, they've kept the BLM and the Forest Service tied up, locked up, you know. And if we'd known this earlier, we wouldn't have been put through a regime of what I would call benign neglect in terms of management on the ground out there.
That raises an interesting question. Does your coordinating status with the federal agencies change the availability or the toolbox of litigation to environmental organizations? Does it compromise their hand in some of their modus operandi of sue and settle?
It has an impact in that, you know, under the cooperating agency approach to things, you know, we're dealing between agencies with the federal government, and in that basis, if there's sidebar discussions or backroom discussions that are going on, they take place. We never have access to it. In coordination, on the other hand, it's in front of the public and everybody else, for that matter. So it no longer gives an advantage to an entity that takes the extra effort to try to cut backroom deals with federal land management agencies.
Is transportation part of what you put out as far as them needing to coordinate with? Do you have a transportation plan to parallel or for them to comply with versus their transportation plan? Because obviously everybody knows that's been a big deal in Kane County.
Right, yeah. Go ahead.
We have an element in our resource management plan about the RS 2477 roads, and right now our resource plan is actually expanding thanks to House Bill 323. For example, in the Glen Canyon region, we're expanding the transportation element. Before this, we just had kind of a brief paragraph on the RS 2477 and that it's Kane County's stance to keep those roads open, but we didn't have a lot of detail, but we're getting there on that part.
I mean, it sounds like being a coordinating agency gives you so much more teeth. Obviously, if you have a good, well-prepared resource management plan, but it obviously comes at a greater cost to a county. What do you have to do differently to gain that status? And is it a one-time investment, or is it a new level of vigilance?
There is a cost, but the cost is definitely worth it. In Kane County's experience, Commissioner Matson had a lot of ties with consultants. We've used the universities, a lot of, it has to be peer reviewed. Gil Miller, Dr. Miller with Utah, he did our economics. So we've been in it for over 2 years now, and it, you know, the resource plan does keep expanding, but local governments are at an advantage because we can do that at a faster rate. So if you start to have a problem as far as consistency, for example, I'm going to use grazing. We brought the ranchers in and started to get their thoughts on, okay, what needs to happen out on the staircase? What can we do to help you out? And we actually had them make a presentation at our coordination meetings, but we took that same information, Gil Miller and Kevin Heaton, they placed surveys for all the ranchers to fill out, and we got that information, what needed to happen for them, and we were able to actually put some of that feedback in our resource management plan. So every month for about 2 years, we've actually worked on that resource plan. We, give and take a little. We work with the BLM, and also we have the National Park Service because of the Glen Canyon area, recreation area. And we've actually had a really good experience working with them and trying to get both sides consistent. But it definitely has been worth it because they're looking at our plans. There's actually things in there, for one example, our economic study. They weren't aware of how much grazing actually helps Kane County and how essential it is. So there's just one example of one little area in our resource plan that I think will continue on into the future.
But let me quantify that just a little, because of the studies that Dr. Miller has done for us on the economic, the social economic side of things. Between our two counties, Garfield and Kane counties, we're seasonal grazing in our counties, but also we have Forest Service and private allotments. But if you take a look at the total gross product produced by the livestock industry in our two counties, it's in excess of $23 million a year. And I went, holy moly, that's powerful.
Well, yet at the very same time, I hear about grazing amendments on the monument and reductions of AUMs in pulling back. And overall, from Farm Bureau, I hear that there have been, we're significantly reduced by like 30%. So are you going to be able to, or 70%, are we going to be able to change that with applying coordinating status?
I hope so. It's steady, straight ahead, keep boring on it and work it out over time. And not only that, we have to rehabilitate the landscape.
True. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back here with the county seat. We're talking about being a coordinating agency instead of a cooperating or a corroborating one. We'll be right back.
There is a place where the desert comes alive, where rain breaks forth from solid stone and gardens spring from blistered rock. There is a place with enough color to make a rainbow jealous, where boulders are bigger than buildings and cliffs are higher than clouds. There is a place that will straighten your step, tighten your grip, widen your eyes, and open your jaw. There is a place.
Kanab, base camp for your southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
There are a couple great things about the Uinta Basin. One is it's still small, it's community.
That makes you feel like when you go somewhere, you know everybody.
When you know your neighbor knows you, and you can trust each other. People look out for one another.
I grew up in the Uinta Basin, and I think that it's a good place to raise a family.
So we packed up our 3 kids, and here we came to Uinta County, and what a great place it was.
It's not too big, it's not too small.
And it has a lot to offer that you just don't get in the big city anymore.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking today about the different levels of participation with the county. How many counties are actually operating with federal agencies in the state on a coordinating basis right now?
Well, if you look at all 29 counties, I'd say in one form or another, the majority of them. But as far as getting into the weeds and the detail of this thing, probably only a couple of us so far.
Okay.
And the opportunities are out there for the others very shortly to be able to tap into that the same way.
And a lot of this has to do with the resource management plans that they were funded for?
Absolutely.
Is that the biggest tool in your toolbox, Shannon?
It is for Kane County, but we also, like I said, right from the get-go, we knew that we needed something that had the local values in it, and we created that Chapter 27, which is the multiple use, multiple functions grazing zone, and it implemented the state code also. And then we developed and revised our resource management plan. So we actually started our coordination process before we revised and updated the resource management plan, because the Chapter 27 was probably only about 5 to 6 pages, but we could create it and get those local values in there pretty quickly. But yes, I would say for most counties, you would definitely want to have your resource plan taken care of and use that for coordination.
Why should counties do this?
Well, one example, coordination lets your public be involved. Your meetings are open to the public. They can come and attend, and then you can hear all of the opinions out there. And in Kane County's meetings, I would say probably about 95% of our public are in favor of the grazing out there. And we could hear the 5% maybe that weren't in favor of it. And then you have all of your federal agencies there at the meeting, so they're all there together and the public can have their voices known. Where in cooperating agency, we're there at the federal agency and it's all confidential and the public's not involved. So I think for the citizens of Utah, it's an exciting process to be able to use.
Do you think it holds their feet to the fire a little bit better about what really is the sentiment on the ground?
Well, it does, and I think it makes the accountability, out in front and visible in such a fashion that we all have to be able to participate and perform, to those standards. So, I think it's really, really powerful.
There might be a county watching out there. They're saying, "Okay, well, they've had to do a lot of work, and we got tight budgets, and I don't know who's going to do this, and we don't really have, our planner is just basically, we borrowed from a city, and I'm hearing all of the things. What do they need to do to get started?
Well, first of all, you need to take your municipal planner's hat off and find the new cap or the new sombrero that you're going to wear on this thing and start thinking about it in terms of how you can represent the overall landscape and what's available to us in our communities, our economy, and socially. So you take a county like Kane County, which is 86% public lands. Where are you going to go to next for the next best shot? And this happens to be it for us.
How did you zone the monument? You said you created zoning for it. What do you call it?
We call it the Grand Staircase Escalante Multiple Functions, Multiple Use Grazing Zone. And I twisted those around. And the reason we added multiple use is that's a term that the BLM is very familiar with, so they would know that. And then Commissioner Matson decided to do the multiple function. That way we could do the uses that we have been used to using out on the grazing zone, and we could coordinate with that.
And you could put them in as part of your plan and say, now you've got to be consistent with this.
Exactly. And we had the public at some of our first meetings say, do you have the jurisdiction to be able to do that? And once we showed them FLTMA, our Federal Land Management Act, and that it had those mandates in there, they were a lot more relaxed and they got excited and wanted to be part of the process, but they definitely needed to know that it is in the law and that we have the ability to be able to do this. And that was important in our meeting, to be able to walk them through that process.
I want everybody to tell our friends about this and watch it again. We'll be back with our final segment here in just a minute.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
There's a little place on a Utah map where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
Have you ever wanted to recreate the world around you? Add some excitement, culture, adventure? Well, there's no need to remake the world when that perfect combination already exists. Just remember 4 words. Welcome to Weber County. In Ogden, you'll find everything you're looking for, from the top of Powder Mountain to the restaurants of our revitalized downtown. Ogden, Utah. Mountain to metro and everything in between. Visit Ogden.com.
Shopping in Davis County has never been better. Experience Station Park, Northern Utah's premier gathering place for holiday shopping, dining, and entertainment. With over 100 shops, Station Park is something for the whole family. Or explore the shopping possibilities this season under one roof at the Layton Hills Mall. Both are conveniently located north of downtown Salt Lake, just off I-15. Come take advantage of special discounts and a wide selection of stores. Visit playindavis.com for more info.
Welcome back to the county seat. We're kind of wrapping up this coordinating status meeting we're having here today. Shannon, a question for you. The public's got to be involved in this process, and the more public's involved, the more teeth you have in what you're planning. But a lot of us, myself included, have been to BLM type meetings where they've got all the alternatives out and you sit and talk to people one at a time and you walk away and you feel like, well, I didn't change anything. How are these meetings different?
Well, that's the really neat part about coordination, is the coordination meetings, they have to be consistent with your local plan. And for example, Kane County, in our planning and zoning meetings, we invited the public out and they can have their input. They can even be at the coordination meetings. And at that point, the federal agencies have to listen. They get to hear those opinions. Where when it's a cooperating agency, that's all confidential and your elected officials are the only ones that get to attend those meetings. So it's a great process in getting your public involved and hearing their opinions and how they want their county to grow.
Is your public more engaged now that they've had a taste of what a coordinating meeting is like versus a roadshow on a grazing plan?
You know, I'd have to be honest with you, in the beginning is when we had a lot of public involvement. It seems like they are very trusting with their planning and zoning and commissioners because they've watched what direction they're going in, and I think they're very happy with that direction. So the very beginning we had a lot of public, but it seems like they've kind of left that up to their elected officials. So I say they are doing a great job.
Would you prefer that there be more people just when you're meeting with the agencies? Would that constant push of people being there?
I think that's going to end up being more or less agenda driven. And so, you know, if there's something that's a hot topic, I think we'll have that kind of participation, but otherwise the updates are there and available for everybody to take a look at.
What's your advice to a commissioner if he's watching this in another county and his head swimming saying, how do we pull this off?
It's not that hard. We have the resources that we can tap into with the funding that comes both from the legislation for House Bill 323, as well as the funding that's been allocated for the counties to take, that's been committed by the Community Impact Board. Then it's just a matter of getting that template and applying that to your individual situation. And we all stand ready to assist each other and help out in that process.
Will there be more strength if more counties are doing this? Can we really kind of turn the landscape of federal land policy?
Well, it'll have an end result of eventually being in the state of Utah's resource management plan. And then the state is at the table with the feds as well. So it's the sum of the parts, and yes, it will be more powerful.
Thank you both for taking the time to do this. Thank you for joining us, and remember, local government is where your life happens. Be part of the solution, get involved, and show up at your next coordinating meeting. We'll see you next week on the County Seat. If you like this video, then we invite you to subscribe to our channel, The County Seat. You can do that here. And we invite you to share with your friends. We also invite you to get all the latest up-to-date information by following us on our social media channels. And if all else fails, make sure that you watch The County Seat Sunday morning at 8:30 right here on ABC4 Utah.